What's up, viewers and listeners? My name is Jay. I'm a registered nutritionist based here in Bristol, working with BJJ enthusiasts across the globe. On today's episode, we have Dr. Emily Eyles on the show. Emily is a brown belt competitor underneath Pedro Bessa and has competed at IBJJF Worlds and Euros, AJP, Grapplefest, and ENYO. I first met Emily at Sweatbox Gym in Bristol when I was a white belt. In today's episode, we talk about female weight categories, fasting for competitions, the menstrual cycle, some awkward moments between female to male coaching, Olympic lifting, and a nice coffee and pastry review at the end. Thank you for tuning in, and of course, if you're not subscribed, please click that button and turn on notifications for any further updates. Thank you for your time and watching and listening. Have a great rest of your listen. Oos. Trying to mute my phone quickly, or mute me.
Oh, no.
No notifications.
I need to make sure. Well, no one calls me anyways. It's fine.
It's fine.
Do not disturb, right? That's on.
Oh, that's clever. I'm so stupid. Put that as the introduction.
I mean, it's recorded.
I know, that's why I was
It's
like,
fine.
I'm so
It's all
stupid.
good.
It's all being recorded, don't worry.
Right, here we are, guys. Episode 3. My name's Jay. I'm the host of the BJJ Nutrition Podcast. I run the BDL Nutrition Consultancy. We like to help, obviously, athletes within the BJJ community perform to their best standards and not do anything silly with their weight cuts. I am here today with Dr. Emily. It's been lovely, obviously, to get her on board and chat about her experiences, what she's done in the past, obviously, with her nutrition, but obviously we're going to talk about some other topics that are around about in the jiu-jitsu community at the moment. So, Emily, welcome. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself and sort of your background and stuff like that? Or?
Yeah, so I'm Emily. I'm from Canada. People think I'm American, but that's fine. I'm introduced as doctor because I have a PhD, so I'm not a medical doctor. And in my job, I do kind of public health research with statistics, but we're going to talk about jiu-jitsu. So I'm a jiu-jitsu brown belt. And I got all of my belts under Pedro Bessa in Bristol, but I started jiu-jitsu in Canada with Jeff Jocelyn, who's an Alliance black belt. He's incredible. Look him up in my hometown of Hamilton, Ontario.
Nice, awesome. So obviously you're out and about quite a lot in terms of the competitive scene. It's not just local, it's not just like small competitions, you're doing lovely big international competitions. What's your preference? Do you prefer local, nice little ones, or do you prefer going to the big stage straight away all the time, or what would be your preferred one?
I mean, I like the vibes everywhere. I think it's different sorts of vibes. Like the local tournaments are really cozy and really nice, and you know, I like the crowd there because everyone kind of knows each other. The international tournaments are also really fun because like now once you do more of them, you start knowing people, so you meet people you know and you don't get to see very much. So I have a lot of friends who I only see at like Worlds or something like that, and that's also
cool.
really great. And also the atmosphere is completely different. Like at Worlds in the Pyramid, it's just so different. And then when you're down in that like, because like the seats are like this, all the mats are just like in this sort of recess. I think that's not quite the right word, but
That's all right.
you step onto the mat, you can just feel this difference in the air, and it's great. It's incredible.
Sounds like a coliseum. Like everyone's
Yeah.
there. Like
Yeah, it is.
Luckily, there's no guy in the middle just going like.
Yeah, and on the black belt day, like on the black belt finals day, it is rammed, and it's amazing.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's awesome. Out of interest, then, obviously, when you obviously were out on the competition scene, what point did you say, right, okay, I appreciate obviously you're from Canada, obviously went back home to see family and that type of thing. At what point did you say, okay, let's move away from the local competition and go onto the bigger platform and be more international, bigger things? Was there a sort of tipping moment for yourself at all, or?
I think like just Euros 2018, like I can't even remember how I did or who I fought, which is pretty wild, but I've done so many tournaments. And I was at blue belt, and I got home and I was like, I think I just want to try harder and try more. And I was like, okay, I want to win Worlds. And so that's what I've been trying to do ever since. I just like kind of decided, I just was like, yeah, okay, let's just blast this.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool, I love it. So within the competitions that you've done, have you always stayed within the same weight category, or has it moved at all, or?
I think maybe nowadays it's a bit different, especially at like white and blue belt, there's a lot more girls fighting, but a lot of the time I'm sort of like around middleweight, which is around 70 kilos, though I have to like, for the middleweight for women, it's 69 kilos, so I have to lose a little weight to make the gi weight. And I've done medium heavy as well. And then I've had to do heavyweight and super heavyweight, often due to lack of opponents. And it happens, it happens now too. So in AJP, the weight classes are 70 and 95 kilos. and I've had to go up to 95 kilos in smaller tournaments. And it's also mixed brown and black belt, so you get there and you're like, oh, I've got to fight a 95 kilo black belt. This is fun. It's actually fun though. I really like it. I
Yeah.
mean, you kind of like no fear, only dreams.
That's such a big jump though, 70 to 95. That's a big
Yeah.
difference. Like, is there just not that much middle ground
I
in
think-
between? Or
I think realistically, the problem is a lot of girls will try to be lower.
yeah,
Though I've noticed there's kind of a recent trend. Some of the women I know who've been historically in lighter weight classes have moved up. So I think a lot of women have decided, actually, no, I'm not going to like do hard cuts anymore. Or I'm going to just be like a bit more chill. But I think as you get over 70, it kind of thins out. Like there's less women. I think there should maybe, in IBJJF actually, the max weight class is 79, and then above that is just unlimited. For AJP, 95 is like the cutoff, so you can't be any heavier than that. But I think there should either be one more intermediate class, or the
Yeah.
70 kilo class should move up. So I have thought about this a bit, and I think they should change the weight classes.
Yeah.
So the current ones are 49, 55, 62, 70, and 95. And that's without the gi. I think they should probably change it to something like 50, 57, like 63 or 64, 72, and then 95 or 72 or 73. Because I know a couple women who do just like blast cut down to 70 because they let you weigh in the day before.
yeah, especially obviously that's, well, again, the compensation obviously.
And also 95 for me, sorry. 95 for brown and black belt has Gabi Pesanya and Yara Suarez and like some monsters.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they haven't put these in sooner, because do you feel like, again, obviously I know you said you're happy to do 95, obviously against another female black belt, for example, but do you think that will off-put some other female athletes to think, well, I'm stuck between 70 and 95 right now, let's say 80 or 79, let's say?
I think the ones who really want to do it will still do it, but I think some maybe at the lower levels would decide not to do that tournament series if they're between 70 and 95.
Yeah, it just seems a little bit way too
though
far.
I think in jiu-jitsu, like, people tend to be fairly gung-ho. Like, I think coaches would tend to encourage it.
Yeah.
Unless you were like 72, then they'd probably maybe suggest you lose the weight.
No, it makes sense.
Sort of depends on the person.
Yeah, I can understand. Out of interest then, obviously, you said you've had to change your weight sometimes, obviously bring things down. You said you've spoken to a few different female athletes, or know female athletes who have done some extreme weight cuts, if you want to do that type of thing. What sort of methodologies have you learnt from in terms of sort of mistakes and things like that? Or have you always been quite comfortable in what you've been doing so far? Or
Obviously, earlier on, I just kind of like made it up. And that tends to just be like, oh, I just won't eat for like 3 days. And that's doable. And people do that nowadays as like a fast. And you do get this kind of state where you're like, I don't even want to eat anything anymore. And you feel like very like zen, but it's not super healthy. I would not suggest doing that unless someone's paying you. And I think a lot of women, and just people in general, just won't do the cut because you don't get paid.
No.
For AJP, I think it's worth it because there is prize money and a ranking system that involves prize money.
sure.
And other incentives, like, do you know Anna Rodriguez, A-Rod? She's a black belt featherweight. She just won PANS.
Yep.
She posted her weight cut like after process. So she cut to 55.
Mm-hmm.
And then overnight she regained to 59 kilos.
Okay, so she put
Yeah.
4 kilograms overnight.
Yeah.
Okay, that's quite. I'd say that's pretty standard. I've seen some like other
Yeah.
bigger numbers where people, not to say from females, from male athletes as well, where it's gone up 9-10 kilograms the day after. Obviously, if it's day before weigh-ins type of
but
thing.
she by doing that she won like I think 3 or 4 grand. I can't remember what the prize money for that category was
Okay.
because AJP bases the prize money on number of competitors. So it doesn't matter the gender; it just matters how many people are in the category.
That's interesting. So
Yeah.
was there more female competitors in AJP, do you think, obviously, compared to other competitions?
I think the incentives are there for brown and black belts.
Yeah.
But a lot of people will avoid 95 again, especially at brown and black, because of Gabi Pesanya. Like, she just wrecks people.
I can imagine. Get comfortable in
Yeah.
that weight category, and it's just kind of your own, isn't it? And taking ownership of it altogether.
Yeah, you do get this thing with heavyweight or super heavyweight jiu-jitsu where people are like, oh, they're just like overweight, that they're not very strong, and like you're faster. Like maybe at white belt and blue belt, but like as you get better, it's just like they're just gonna be bigger and way more jacked, and you're like, yeah.
I just got to deal with it.
It's like a kind of a false saying, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's again, there's something that I personally believe in is that obviously through, especially sort of the lower ranks and stuff like that, that if you are going to be a heavyweight, my personal preference is not just to be the overweight heavyweight, right?
Yeah.
And be an athletic heavyweight, because it's going to play more to your advantage, obviously longer term all of a sudden, and not just rely purely on strength, but movement and agility and all these type of things all together. But no, you're very much right.
Yeah.
Obviously, when it comes to that, it's trying to find that nice balance for it. So you mentioned 3-day fasting. Obviously, that must have been tricky in places, obviously, to try and manage that. How long were you doing that before you kind of realised, do you know what, this is not really working out for me that well?
I just think I started doing more like S&C, and I kind of got better idea of how my body works, which you do when you like cut and weigh yourself a lot. Don't weigh yourself every day. I used to. I managed to stop doing that like 2 months ago,
Yeah.
but I have like such a good idea of how much I weigh and what I need to eat to like drop my weight, that like most of it's just like stop eating croissants, mate.
I forgot you're the pastry connoisseur,
I
aren't
love
you?
pastries. But yeah, I think like you get these skills where you're a bit like, this probably isn't good, but I can do, like I can grab my stomach and guess my weight within about 100 grams, and I don't think I've ever been wrong.
I haven't got that power. Is that,
Yeah,
is
that's the power you get from weighing yourself every day for like 6 years. Don't do it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Out of interest, then, obviously, you mentioned weighing yourself every day. Was that even outside of like competitions as well? You would still
Yeah, so I
trying
just weigh myself after training every day.
after training every day. Okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Again, from my approach and how I generally deal with clients, and obviously, again, listeners and viewers, obviously, don't be put off by this. For me, it's like data points and data tracking all the time. And sometimes that emotional connection to it, obviously outside of competition environment, is what can be damaging to a lot of people, if that makes sense. And so it's trying to find that fine line of saying, okay, fine, if it's affecting you emotionally as to where you feel you should be and how that's impacting the rest of your day all of a sudden, then fine. There's other methodologies around it we can look at straight away. From my point, it's just efficiency and effectiveness. I'm sure, obviously, from your background, if you had a lab rat, right, and told it to run on the wheel for an hour every day and fed it only a certain amount of food, you'd expect some sort of result. And if the result's not there, you start to make sort of finer adjustments around it. But to make the adjustments, you need the data behind it to see what's going on, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah, I
again,
mean, for me, if I am trying to make weight for a tournament, I will go back to it. But I realized I was just doing it and I didn't really know why I was doing it anymore.
okay,
But when I'm doing it for a competition, I will just see where I'm at, and
Sure.
then I can make adjustments. Like if I am going out with friends, and then I can decide like, oh, I can just eat what I like when I go out with my friends,
Yeah.
which is amazing. Or I'm like, oh, maybe I should like not get, like something fried. I'll get something like salady. But I actually really like salady food, so
nothing wrong with greens at the end of the day.
I love greens. I eat vegetables at pretty much every meal.
Super,
Not
yes.
enough protein.
That's a big
That's
tick,
the problem.
definitely, from a nutrition standpoint. But no, that's good to hear. I think, like as you mentioned, outside of competition, there should be no reason for it, if that makes sense. If you're
Yeah.
not trying to manipulate your weight, be that build weight, or obviously maintain it, or lose weight, once you're outside of that and you have no purpose behind it, there isn't really a benefit to it. Unless,
Yeah.
like I said, there's a reason why, a purpose for what you're doing, then no, that's fully understandable. Obviously, you said it took you a little while to sort of move away from that. Was
Yeah.
there like a light bulb moment where you were like kind of saying,
I
actually,
kind of realized I think it's sort of a behavior that came from an unhealthy place. Like as a behavior, like it's fine because for me, like I don't really have a problem with my appearance. And I don't think my weight is linked to that. So it's not necessarily like a body thing, but like I just realized there's no reason for what I'm doing. So I need to change that. But once I start a routine, I get really stuck in it. And that can be really good.
yeah,
So it means like I can decide, okay, I'm going to compete and I'm going to just go and do it. But it also means that if I'm sort of in a cycle of behavior where I'm like, this isn't benefiting me, it can be hard to get out of it.
sure, no, I can understand it. Obviously, we're all creatures
Yeah.
of habit. We do things obviously all the time, even if they're not productive with some of these habits, may I say. So, no,
Yeah.
it's interesting. So, in terms of your competing career, then, would you say the majority of it, you've always had to lose a bit of weight to get on the mat in this sense, or has it always been a mixture of like, actually, fine, I'm in the right weight category, or have you ever gone up? Obviously, other than 95, as you kind of mentioned, has there been like one camp more than the other, if that makes sense? Or
I would say I've probably lost weight more. For AJP, it was good because it's weigh in without the gi, so I tend to sit below 70 without the gi anyways.
Nice.
So that if I would travel, I worry a little, like what if I suddenly gained like 500 grams and then like I'm overweight, which never happens, but you have this like fear. But for Euros, I moved up to 74, and I actually felt quite good at that. Though I did weigh in at like 71 in the gi or 70 in the gi, and I was like, I probably could have cut. But you know, the middleweight category is full of killers as well. So both categories are really good. One of the reasons early on I started cutting a little bit is because either I had to go up really high, or like there just wasn't anyone. So you had to lose weight in order to be able to compete.
That's a really shame. Like you're being forced to do stuff based on obviously how many people you got available.
I mean,
Now,
no one's holding a gun to your head.
no, but it's still at the same time. I appreciate, as with everyone I've spoken to, is the fact that the experience, the rank belt, you go up. Okay, you've just minimised your pool a little bit more.
Yeah.
You then obviously got age in there, and then obviously to top it on there, and it shouldn't be the case. Obviously, being a female competitor, your pool just gets even smaller each and every time. All of a sudden, as you sort of go up from there.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I think that's also like you get older through time, which sounds really silly now that I say that out loud. But like people, you know, their lives change over time. They get families, they like move, they like, you know, it's a hobby. Some people just don't want to do it anymore, and that's fine too.
That's interesting. You're the second person to say, obviously, this is just a hobby. At the end of the day, you're not being paid for it.
I mean, I've been paid a little bit now, but
got a big deal in here, haven't we?
not a lot, a little bit.
Still, we're getting paid any of us in this room right now, type of thing. I've not got a single penny. But again, like I said, it just is so strange to see that. And again, not strange. I don't obviously agree with it in the sense that you're being not say forced. Obviously, as you mentioned, there's no gun to your head, but your decisions are somewhat manipulated based on what is out there available for you. And so
Yeah.
it's a shame because there should be just more categories and obviously some more people out there for you to go up against, if that makes sense. And do you feel like, I know we touched on it obviously recording this, but females obviously in jiu-jitsu, is there anything we can do to encourage more to get more competitors out there type of thing? Or
This is probably maybe going to be a bit controversial.
Oh, we love controversial. It's all
Haha, it's a podcast. Let's be controversial. The tournaments that I think do it really well give free or discounted registration to women to encourage them to come out. And then I don't know if they will have the data, if that encourages women to do those tournaments again, paid. So you essentially have a subsidy for women, and I know a lot of men won't think it's fair, and it is not fair, but equity is also trying to change those fairnesses. Though it's not really like men are being like, no woman, you can't compete. I don't think it has anything to do with men. Just to encourage more women to compete, I think that would be helpful. I did a couple tournaments where I had free registration because they were doing free registration for women. I think it was Grappling Industries
Nice.
in like 2014 or 2015, which is a really long time ago. And another one, or I think some tournaments, they do give free or cheap registration to higher belts. So not even bringing womanness into it, but like giving free or discounted registration to higher belts. I think Empire does that, though I think they had to dial it back a little because people were taking the piss. So I think it was free, and I think now it's a discount. But Jake's a really cool guy. The Empire guys are really cool. So
Shout out to him.
shout out.
Love it.
But yeah, I think those sorts of things, and then gyms maybe. I think sometimes competition training can be hard for women because you want to go hard, and I do go quite hard, but like men are big and very strong, and it just wears on your body a lot, and sometimes you just can't execute very much in a session because the pool you have means like your window of opportunity and timing to hit techniques is so small that you have to be very good to do it. And even then, like, you know, if someone's like way bigger than you, can just be like, nah. So I think that can be quite discouraging as well. And I don't mean you have to like treat women very softly, but I think people just need to speak more and be more realistic about how training sessions go. Like sometimes I won't even, like I might get a sweep, but it's, you know, a very like, you know, like in Kill Bill when she's in the coffin underground and she's like punching through the air and trying to like dig through the, like that's what my jiu-jitsu against big guys feels like. And then I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh my God. I mean like, I mean, don't mean like huge, like 100 kilo guys. I mean like standard, normal size, men. They're just big and strong. Sorry, I went off on a really big tangent,
No,
but yeah,
it's fine.
I feel like the Kill Bill metaphor is like 90% of my jiu-jitsu, which is why it looks a little bit sloppy.
So it's interesting you touched on the fact that there seems to be like a need for encouragement to get females out there competing more, right? And they're giving an incentive, which is nice to hear. They're there, if you see what I mean. So what's then the difference between them signing up and then just going for the competitions? Why does the incentive need to be there, if you see what I mean? Because it's not as if they're not around, right? They are there. Is there just an element of competing and just people just aren't keen on? Or, as we said, it's a hobby, a sport type thing, and people don't have to compete in the slightest bit, but...
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to do the like classic woman versus men chat, but I think women and men are both equally sort of anxious or self-conscious about things, but I think maybe women are differently self-conscious. Like they don't like put themselves out there in the same way. And I think that kind of encouragement can really help, or like getting people together and going as a team, I think would be very encouraging. So that kind of stuff, but everyone's incentivized by something that's free or cheap.
Okay, that's interesting. I know obviously when you look at other industries and other sort of fields, they have, for example, female-only gyms, right?
Yeah.
I'm not aware of this might be my naivety. Have they got any female-only jiu-jitsu schools out there at the moment or anything like that at all?
Maybe in the Middle East.
Yeah.
I think they have female-only teams. I think Amal Amjahid, I think that I might have completely messed up her name. She's Belgian. I think she runs a team out in Saudi Arabia.
Nice.
And that's obviously a women's team.
Okay, that's interesting. Do you think that would help with encouragement, sort of having... I appreciate
having loads of women is definitely more encouraging. Yeah.
I imagine it helped with training and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I think having like a little squad going, and I think this isn't just for women, but I think this is something that would help women in that thing where I said they're sort of self-conscious in a different way. I think men also benefit from having like a squad all going, if that makes sense.
No,
but I think maybe it's just because maybe they're self-conscious in the same way, they just don't talk about it in the same way.
No, I could vouch for that. There's definitely a lot of things. Yesterday, obviously, I went out and competed myself, and hence the marks on the eyes. So apologies for that. Face for podcasting, as I said. And again, the chat in the changing room afterwards with all of the guys that we all fought each other and how we were saying, like, I thought you were going to do this, and I thought you were going to be a real nightmare to deal with, and like all these mental concerns that you build up in your head as to say, and it's always the worst case scenario. It's never, oh, I thought I was going to do well against this guy or something like this. It's always that mental build up, and it actually never really pans out that way at all type thing.
Yeah.
It's.
I think it's maybe just socialization in that, like in general, like women are not socialized to like really put themselves forward and put themselves out there, and I'm speaking like in a really general sense. So maybe there's that, and maybe there's worry about like not looking their best, which I know sounds like super sexist, but I mean like, you know, you have to put yourself out there in front of a huge crowd, and like I think women are very heavily not criticized, but like appearance is very important, like physical appearance, and I'm just, I mean, very obviously don't really care that much about it.
Don't worry, I live in joggers and 24/7.
But I know like for other women they would have worries like, you know, what if, you know, they look bad, or like, you know, I don't want to like, I don't know. I've never had these concerns, so I can't really like articulate them, but I know they exist.
Yeah, it's fine. It's just interesting topics, which I think, I'm all for getting everyone speaking about it more, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The whole point of trying to get more awareness around these different topics, which may not be easy to talk about and may not have a direct solution for. And it's trying to, all I would want to do is, from the concerns from other industries outside of jiu-jitsu who have gone down the same path, that we learn from their mistakes and not just simply replicate them, if you see what I mean. And so, again, it talks about obviously equal pay within women's football, for example, right?
Yeah.
There should be the same sort of element when it comes to this. And again, as far as my naivety, obviously to the levels obviously of you competing at, I presume that if you win black belt gold at Pan Am's, you're going to get the same sort of pay as a female as a male would, type of thing. I don't know if that is.
I think you get the same pay because the pay is nothing.
Sorry. All right. Different competition. That shows my naivety there.
I guess what I mean is you could ask another woman the same question and she might have a different answer, because like I said, I think men and women and people are all like kind of broadly similar. I think it's just the expressions of how we are is different.
Okay. Yeah. As you mentioned, obviously it's quite different in terms of that sort of self-awareness, self-assessment, obviously, when it comes to male and females. Like, again, my wife, how much I convinced her to try and do jiu-jitsu, her first concern straight away is like, what happens if someone pulls my hair? And I'm like, I can't relate to it, so I don't know. Do you know what I mean? And so it's interesting that you mentioned that these groups of individuals are going to have similar connections about different things and be able to relate to it. Do you know what I mean? Or
yeah, and I think people dismiss those sorts of concerns, like pulling the hair or like appearance stuff, as like being a bit like a lot of like kind of women's things, like being a bit. I can't think of a good word. Just like you should just get over it. But I think they're equally valid as other concerns.
Sure. No,
Yeah.
that makes absolute sense.
But I mean, I coach men and women, and I think they're equally kind of like self-conscious or anxious. It's just manifests quite differently, and I think that's probably the point I'm trying to drive at.
Yeah, it makes sense. Everyone's going to have their own concerns about different things. Again, not to go into too much detail, as soon as someone wants to do a knee cut on me, instantly I'm thinking, right, is someone about to go knee over my bollocks as soon as it goes into that position or something like that, which in the day...
Yeah, I remember when I was teaching, a guy asked me how he doesn't crush his manhood in an armbar, and I just was like, bro, like it's not something that happens. Like I was like, maybe if you try like to angle it, like I don't know. It's a question I can't answer.
All things to have for it. I bet you walked away from it still thinking like...
No, I walked away thinking like, oh my gosh. I don't think I answered that very well. But
just get over it, bro. It'll be fine.
just, if you want to win, that's what you have to do.
Crush your bollocks to win. I love it. What's that phrase? You won't win a marathon without some nipple tape or something like that.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Oh, no, that's great. So anything obviously you learned from going down in weight and things like that, you mentioned obviously 3-day fasting wasn't going well. Was there, like I said, a light bulb moment where you found out obviously you were doing the S&C, was there just lack of energy, lack of things that were going on? Were you getting more injuries or anything like that at all? Or?
I think the light bulb moment wasn't like that it wasn't working. It's just that I was like, wow, this is really like unhealthy.
Okay.
Like I can just decide not to eat and I just won't, which is not good. Don't do that. But like with S&C and stuff, I think I just built more muscles, so I leaned out a bit more.
Okay.
So I became a bit less soft, a bit less like a panda bear. Still like a panda bear, still a little soft.
Nothing wrong with pandas. I think they're the ultimate animal, along with koalas. You touched on S&C, right? Anyone who goes onto your social media sees that you do some Olympic lifting.
Yeah, it's just for fun actually. It's not actually like my S&C for jiu-jitsu. It's just like it hits the same, like itches the same part of my brain as jiu-jitsu, because it's like, unlike jiu-jitsu, well, it is jiu-jitsu, it's complicated, but like unlike jiu-jitsu, there's 2 lifts and that's it. And then like within those 2 lifts, you have to figure out everything, and it's really technical. So it's like itches that part of my brain. So that's why it's my hobby, because you can just you drill the same thing over and over again. So it's like jiu-jitsu, except it's with weights, and it looks really cool.
See, I don't know if I've got the wrong mindset, because I came from bodybuilding, did a bit of CrossFit to begin with, and the Olympic lifting just didn't fancy it. There's certain movements within Olympic lifting I'm okay with, a clean, like a strict press or something like that, or clean and jerk or clean and press. As soon as it came into snatches, all of a sudden, I was just like, nah, this just isn't for me. It's too technical for, and again, I don't know if it's just being the bigger guy or trying to muscle it up all the time and be like, that's fine, but yeah, I just couldn't get on with it altogether. But
it took me, and this is probably says a lot about me, it took me like 2 years to be able to sit into a snatch. But I drilled it constantly for 2 years, and I did like snatch balance and overhead squat, and like I think I had the mobility, just like a bit dyspraxic, so like I just couldn't sit down even in the overhead squat, so I had to like kind of work and figure it out, and that's how I got better at jiu-jitsu too, because I was like diabolically bad at jiu-jitsu for a long time. Ask Pedro how I did an armbar, or ask like Tom how I like tried to do something to like spear myself in the ground. Like it just took ages, but when you get it, it's so satisfying. Like, you know.
I can imagine you probably hit the sweet spot when you're like, oh,
yeah,
this is
it's just, and it feels like, I think the kids say cash money when you like hit a snatch and you're like on the bottom and you're like this and you're like, yeah.
You're just looking around, everyone.
Then you got to get up.
Yeah, that's a bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Again, and you mentioned that you felt like it improved your jiu-jitsu game. So even though you said it wasn't your S&C, but it was obviously...
I think, yeah, because I had to fix, like, I mean, my shoulders still aren't super mobile. Opponents, don't listen to that part. But like, I had to figure out how to be able to like do that, like the overhead squat kind of snatch position, and that was quite hard. So I think it helped me improve my mobility a lot, because I really wanted to be able to snatch, but I couldn't do it.
Interesting. So it was kind of something which challenged you in a completely different way, which then, did you think early doors that was going to contribute to having better shoulder mobility in the long run?
No, because I just didn't really get why I couldn't do it. But also, like, it did have this really convenient timing of of I kind of started doing it like in early 2020.
Mm.
So then there was, as everyone knows, not much to do jiu-jitsu wise for a couple of years there.
We can't say as to why, but yeah, otherwise
I think
this video will get
everyone
censored.
knows.
Yeah,
But yeah, so like I think that like because I didn't have as much jiu-jitsu, I just like blasted Olympic lifting.
sure. I
Just-
get what you
just
could do it
for
by
fun.
yourself, couldn't you? Obviously, at the
You
end of the
can do
day,
it by yourself,
yeah.
but we have like a little class at Sweatbox. So I think there's 3 times a week and advertising.
Yeah, go for it.
But I usually go on Saturday mornings if I'm not competing,
That's fine.
and then
Maybe-
just chill. I do it chill times. Like right now, like for whatever reason, when I clean, it kind of doesn't feel nice, so I just snatch.
That's fair enough. Do you keep it in on the lead up to competitions, or anything that you sort of remove out, or is there any sort of structures that you follow, type of thing?
For all lifting, no, 'cause it's for fun. For like the S&C I do with Electrum, so Electrum Performance, who does a lot of the S&C for Atos, so they're down in San Diego. I'll just kind of not lift like a day or two before. I just don't train the day or two before.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
keep it in most of the time, and then
Yeah, or I might like back off and not lift as much,
cool.
because you don't need to lift your max every time.
No, you can work around the lower rep ranges and percentiles quite a lot and get some significant improvement, I think.
Yeah, it's just nice to move and do stuff.
Definitely. Playtime, like, let's be honest, we go from this child environment of being excited to go out for lunchtime, break time, going out with your mates, running around, all this type of stuff, to this adulthood where it's like, no, you must sit in the chair now for the rest of your life. And for some reason, there's a stigma around exercise that I wouldn't say for everyone, maybe not many sort of viewers and listeners to this, but I'd say general population, the exercise, oh, that's a bit of a task. Oh, I don't want to bother with this. Oh, it seems like, and don't get me wrong, part of me feels like they need to find the thing they love, but it just boggles me that as kids, that's the biggest thing that we look forward to is playtime, and this is what this is as such. Do you know what I mean? So
I think that motivation kind of goes back to like why people don't compete, and maybe not just women, but people. It's like, what are the barriers that stop someone from starting something? Because I don't think there's necessarily like a stigma against exercise. I think people are just, it's hard for people to start doing something new. And they just need to find the thing they like. Like I've known lots of people who just like aren't really into sport, and they're like, ooh, and then they find something they really like, and then they're like super into it.
Yeah.
So, but I think getting people to try different sports, or like enabling people to go, like figure out why you don't do something is like wild. Like if I'm feeling anxious about doing something, I try to think like what's stopping me, and sometimes it's like something really minor, like, oh, I don't know like where I'll leave my bike, for example, like something really, really minor. And then when I like, don't worry, like we'll figure it out when we get there, then I just do it. So I think it's just stuff like that for a lot of people. I don't think it's they don't like exercise. I think they just have these like mental barriers that are like really minor, but they don't think of them this way. There's this anecdote that I read somewhere from a psychiatrist about this like corporate lawyer, and I tell people this anecdote all the time because I think it's like sometimes you have to be a bit ridiculous with yourself. Like you're being like, you know, I don't want my hair to be pulled. Like people would think maybe that's a bit ridiculous, but you have to accept like that's something you think. You can't dismiss the thoughts. So there's this woman who, she was like a corporate lawyer, like super high flying, and she kept worrying because she thought the hairdryer was plugged in was going to burn down her house. Like,
how come my wife's
and so
on my
she-
mind with
so
a
she
hair
ca-
straightness at the moment?
so she kept like having to leave meetings and go home, and she was going to lose her job because it was consuming her whole life. So the psychiatrist just told her, unplug the hairdryer and take it with you to work. And then it completely solved her problem. Like, it's really ridiculous. Like, you're taking a hairdryer to work, but it completely solves your problem of like, oh my God, my house is going to burn down. Similarly, like when you want to start something or do something or motivate yourself to something, try to figure out like, is it that I don't want to do it, or is there like this minor thing that's like kind of sticking in my brain? And like these minor things always stick in your brain. And like you just have to figure out what it is. And then when you figure out what it is, if it's something you can easily fix, like the hairdryer, or like, you know what, I'll figure out where to lock my bike, or you know what, I'll bring food with me because I don't know if there's going to be food there, or just something like that.
Yeah.
Like, or like you worry like the people aren't going to be nice. You're like, well, if they're not nice, I'll just leave. So like you have to like explicitly tell yourself these things. Like when you try something out, like, oh, what if the people are rude? Then you just leave.
It's a bit of self-affirmation.
But you have to tell yourself that.
Yeah, no, I like that. It's the same thing, again, we tell with athletes who obviously go and compete at different places, be that jiu-jitsu, MMA, Muay Thai, or something like this. I said, look, we're going to just remove any variables out of the equation.
Yeah.
Take your own food, take your own water, do all these type of things. And they're like, what, is the water going to be poisoned or something? I said, no, because at the end of the day, you don't know where you're going to turn up to, right? Is there going to be a queue of 20 people filling up from a tiny rusty tap type thing to fill water? And then you're just there wasting half an hour of your time when you want to be just relaxing, getting into the environment, not worry about where I'm going to get my next sort of sip of water type thing.
That reminds me when I was refereeing yesterday at sunny Crystal Palace Sports Centre, which a lot of people in the UK will know because the London IBJJFs are there. I was refereeing at All Stars, who are great people, so think about doing their events, I guess. Advertising.
I'm there in 2 weeks' time on the All Stars Cardiff Pro, so yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. But there was no water fountain, and the cafe, for whatever reason, there's a cafe there, and it was just closed. Like everything was gone. And I was like, oh, there's nowhere to fill up a bottle. But I brought like 5 drinks with me. So it was okay. But like that reminds me of the bring your own water.
Bring your own water, bring your own food.
Because like if you bring your own stuff and like there's something better there, you can just take it back home or eat it later.
No, exactly. It's not as if we live in a time where we don't have fridges or freezers and stuff like this.
Exactly.
We sometimes live in an environment where we think, I need to finish this now because there'll be no other time to eat this. And it's like, well, no, any other time. We're not on a sea trying to get scurvy all of a sudden on a boat.
It's kind of about like thinking what lizard brain's doing, which is like your underbrain. So many weird words, sorry. These are not technical words, they're just my own words. You're like underbrain, lizard brain, and then like trying to like defeat it because it's always wants to just like hibernate.
Yeah. Keep safe, don't do anything else.
Safe.
Keeps the normal.
Or like maybe there's a threat here of like the hairdryer or like not having somewhere to lock your bike.
There's a couple of things that come
I know that's like a really thing I keep returning to, but Bristol is so bad for bike theft and I cycle everywhere.
I get exactly what you mean. There's a couple of things that remind me. I've definitely seen a reel posting around recently. I don't know if he was a stand-up comedian or some sort of like motivational speaker about the guy who was a black belt, and everyone says like, what was the hardest thing about it? To which then he takes out his white belt and he says, this was the hardest thing about it, just starting in the first place. And he said the black belt was the person who just kept on turning up type thing, which I'm sure many people obviously would have heard of many a time. And there was another one which said to come to mind about sort of starting things. And it's something which, again, with my clients, I say to them, if you haven't got anything, obviously, if we encourage them to maintain their weight, lose some body fat, whatever it is, through step count alone, which obviously we all have to walk everywhere, so it's quite useful to obviously in that instance. But in terms of what they have to do in terms of exercise, of course, we want to encourage resistance training. We've got lots of benefits behind that. And what form that comes in, I don't mind. Like, you turn around to me and say, I'm going to do some slacklining, and one day I'm like, great, you found something. This is great. As long as you enjoy it, I do not care, because you'll have no little resistance to not go, if that makes sense. If you're doing something you just absolutely hate because, I don't know, you've seen all your friends go to Pure Gym and you think, well, that's the thing that everyone's doing, I must do it. You wake up one morning feeling really tired, instantly you've got a bit of resistance barrier, so you're not going to go. Right? And it's a harder battle to overcome, whereas you find something, that passion, which I'm sure any of the jiu-jitsu people listening to this now, yes, we turn up pretty much 2 times a week, 3 times a week, 1 day a week, whatever it may be, because we enjoy it, we make time for it, and we don't really care about the outcome of it, being in the sense that you're there beaten up after a session, or you've pulled off the armbar you've been working on, or whatever it may be, but you enjoy it that much that you just make time for it each and every time, and it's really nice to see when it comes to that. Okay, a couple of questions I was going to ask you, also we got through from Instagram for you, all right? This one came from another female competitor, and so she wanted your sort of insights to this. She's due to compete on a show at the moment. She's the first one up. I don't want to give any names to ruin it, obviously, in terms of her competitor might be seeing this or whatever. How do we deal with competition nerves, and how would you deal with being first on the mat for a show?
I would say, first of all, good luck. Direct. I think there's like something to be said about going first, though, because like people aren't really sure what to expect, right? So like no matter what, they're going to be like, well, I think they usually think good about the people who go first. The people in the middle are the people who kind of get lost in the crowd. So I think you'll have a really good chance to stand out. I think just when you do shows, you just have to go and try your best to like put on the best show you can. It doesn't really matter the result. I mean, it does, like winning is sick. But like, as long as you just kind of blast it and try to just keep going and don't get stuck in like a certain position, like in points jiu-jitsu, it's fine to just like chill out and close guard for 5 minutes. But I mean, it's not. I will penalize it if I'm refereeing and you're not doing anything.
You heard it here first.
You heard it
Emily's
here first. But I think you just have to like not get too hyped up. That's the problem I had recently. I was like so hyped up from like competing in the gi at this tournament. Like I fought someone who I looked up to for a long time, a black belt. I mean, she toe held me, but it was fine. But like I was so hyped up for the no gi, and I was so like wound up that I just like wasn't quite present enough. So like you need to be focused, but not too like shaking and hyped up. And like for me, I like to like kind of clear my brain. So like if other thoughts float in, I just say like, oh, like let's just think about that later. Right now, we're just kind of focusing on the task at hand, and then being realistic about what you can do with where you are at, which is important for training too, and like when you train and setting goals. But like if like you have like 30 seconds left and you've got like a kind of guard, but you could attack something on a show, just blast it. Like a lot of the shows use Grapplefest rules. Polaris rules are slightly different depending on the format, but the Grapplefest rules, I think ENYO uses Grapplefest rules or a modified version. A lot of the ones that use judging criteria, the main criteria is submission attempts. So like even if you like go for something and end up on the bottom, don't worry. Just blast it and have fun. All the shows have a really great environment as well. So yeah, my advice is don't worry about being first on the card, but worry about being the first one to act in the match. Yeah.
Love it. And I think you're very much right with a lot of these other promotions at the moment who are getting people on board, obviously, to come and compete on their shows and stuff like this. To some degree, they want entertainment. And
I mean, it's a show.
It's a show. They want it as a marketing point of view. It's the same point, obviously, how previous podcast discussions, which I won't go into details, I feel like I've got enough about it, about ADCC putting on a great show compared to some of the bigger shows, obviously, out there who are trying to do that. And in terms of marketing capabilities and stuff, it's great. We had one of our guys, Mark Hibbard, who was on the Grapplefest highlight reel recently, obviously, for the next promotion. And so he didn't get the submission, but he put on a great show. He put a lot of attempts in there, stuff like this, and it's the same sort of thing.
They want to see movement.
Yeah, exactly. So just give it your all and just see what happens by the sound of things. And if it's not the result you want, at least you've tried and not the I wonder if what would have happened type of thing.
Yeah, and people will still book you on shows if you don't win some of the shows. Exactly. Trust me.
Talking from first-hand experience. The next one, obviously, again, a bit personal on this one, but it's all about your nutrition and training schedule around your menstrual cycle. So do you do anything different with that at all, or?
I just bleed, bro. Like, I don't really like do much around that. Like, I guess for me, I just sort of do the same as always. I might eat more. I might eat a little more. I might be more hungry. I realized like I was getting cranky, not because of my period, but like in general because I wasn't eating enough. Like, so I'll have inter-training snacks, which are usually like, you know, a couple of nuts and some sweets. So you get like the fat and the sugar. I'm not a nutritionist.
Don't worry. As I say to everyone, I'm not here to judge. It's the same thing I get with my friends. I go out for a meal, and they're like, what should I be eating?
I'm not necessarily the person to be like asking for like, you know, advice and taking it as like, you know, the Bible, but I will just probably eat a little bit more.
Yeah.
If I have like cramps or something, if they're really awful, I might take some ibuprofen or paracetamol, but I'm quite lucky in that I don't get like terrible cramps.
Sure. Okay.
Or symptoms of that.
No, that's fine. Again, from a nutrition standpoint, obviously, again, being a male, I'm not here to sound patronising, and I know everything about this, but we've got a lot of female clients on our books and so on, and so it's a conversation which I have probably more regular than more people even realise about this. But if we were to take the standard sort of 28-day cycle, obviously from day one when you've had your period, we've then got sort of a split in the middle point. Obviously, we have the follicle phase, which is the first 2 weeks. Then we have the luteal. That was the one. I knew it would begin with an L. Always remember follicle first, luteal last. It's the final 2 weeks of that. Okay, first 2 weeks, obviously, we have our periods. Hormones are a little bit all wavy at the moment. We're into the second week, our testosterone shoots up through the roof, so that's when you should be hitting your big, 90% 1 rep maxes, obviously on snatches and stuff like that.
So bad at being a woman.
Well, it's interesting, like when you look at some other competitors in different sports and stuff, I don't know if this goes on obviously within the BJJ world, it may do. They will manipulate their menstrual cycle to have higher testosterone levels for when it comes to things like the Olympics all of a sudden, so that when they
I
go
mean,
in.
there's money in that, so I can kind of see that.
Yeah, so
Um,
it's a lot of detail when it comes into it, and then the final sort of 2 weeks of it, that's when obviously testosterone goes back down, estrogen's trying to obviously level itself back out again, and we typically get more hunger sensations around that period, as you kind of mentioned, and so the technical balance, obviously, we look at on average is around about 300 to 400 calories extra around that 2 week phase, obviously for
yeah,
it.
that seems about right from what I eat extra.
Yeah, and so it's nothing majorly significant. Obviously, there's an element of control around it because obviously, if any of us feel hungry all of a sudden, we could just eat everything under the sun, right?
Yeah.
And it's trying to make sure we're mentally in the right place, so we're not beating ourselves up about it too much. Especially if obviously if we're in a dieting phase, that's fine. Obviously, people can get a little bit hung up about it, but the reality behind it is that it's to be expected. The only gripe that I have, obviously, with what we know of it, as I mentioned to yourself earlier, all the testing that's been done around this has been on just rats so far. All the publications that have come out have been on that. And so,
Yeah.
as I mentioned, so with men, so with women, we're all built differently. People are going to respond completely differently. As you mentioned, obviously, you get cramps, obviously, when it comes to it all of a sudden. Some women don't get anything like that at all. Some people get really hungry, obviously, in that luteal phase, and other people just don't. And so, I wouldn't, and this, again, it's always, I don't like to crush people's dreams with this and say, look, if you're going to ADCC finals, right, and you want to have that 1% extra, it's something you could really consider. I just wouldn't want anyone to upturn their whole lifestyle around their menstrual cycle unless it was impacting them that significantly to gain that extra 1% to try and, I'm sure there's many other things that you could do to improve your game or your performance outside of that, if that makes sense. So
No, I guess the main thing to say is you could probably find that 1% somewhere else, like sleeping 1% better, or
exactly,
eating a little bit better, or doing more mobility,
yeah,
something like that.
Exactly that, and the idea being is I don't want to come across some man saying menstrual cycle makes no difference, just crack on with something else type thing. Of course it has an impact. It's the idea being that if you want to take it in consideration, it impacts you a lot, then fine. It's something obviously we can be aware of, we can act upon it, that's no problem. Will you see a significant difference of it? Again, very personal. Some people find they get massive differences altogether. So if I was in anyone's shoes that were looking to obviously look at changing things around, give it a trial. Do it for a month, do it for a couple of months, see what happens. My biggest concern is that there could be a lot of changes within your structure, and you may find that all of a sudden your trajectory on certain things, so take your lifts for example, you'd only be lifting heavier potentially the first couple of weeks, and then afterwards you're kind of going, oh, I'm going to reduce my lifting down a little bit. So this is the shitter phase obviously of it. You then got 2 weeks of performance increasing, and then it's like, oh, bring it back down again. Whereas mentally, you could actually be in a better headspace, not thinking this is the week where I'm going to perform lower compared to the previous weeks. And is it then something that's a little bit more psychological in that point?
Yeah.
I wouldn't want someone to manifest something and being like, oh, I'm going to perform bad this week because I'm in the luteal phase of my menstrual cycle.
I suppose I have two thoughts. My first thought is if you have someone, if you're an Olympic athlete and you have someone managing all of that for you, then it's fine. You're golden, right? My second thought is for most people, it's not that complicated. Just get on with it, lads. If you want to lift the weights, lift the weights. If you want to train, train.
Exactly.
Obviously, if your period is really bad, and I know some people who get cramps so bad they need to lie down for a while and things like that. I'm not saying you're being lazy. I just mean if you're trying to min-max your life, it's just it doesn't seem very pleasant.
No, it's a fight.
And I don't know what gain you're actually getting from that.
Yeah, that's exactly my point. If you're going for the top echelons and you've got someone helping you with that, then great, go for that extra 1%. But like I said, I just don't see upturning your life completely around one thing unless it's massively impacting you.
Yeah.
I
would talk to a GP if it is.
Yes. One other sort of recommendations and supplementations for cramps is vitamin E and omega-3 are the two key ones. So again, one of the things that I recommend daily for majority of clients is omega-3 capsules, high strength ones. Go and get them from Boots. I'm not associated with them, but you can get a cheap deal from there. And obviously vitamin E you can get from there as well. They normally have a 3 for 2. So grab yourself some vitamin D because we never get enough of it here in the UK anyway. So That will be the helpful one when it comes to that.
Just kind of blast fish oil and hope for the best. It's like one capsule, I'll just like take like 3 and hope for
Well,
the best.
you get the high strength ones. There's only one capsule you need. That's the
God, I've probably been taking way too much.
it really helps. There's
Got
some
gills.
supplements out there which is just absolute nightmare. Where you look at the packaging, it's like take 9 capsules a day. I'm like, I haven't got time to take 9 capsules a day. I'm not going to force feed them all down in one lump type thing. It's
Yeah, I bought this like cherry stuff that was kind of working for me before, maybe as a placebo, but I thought it was 1 a day, and then it was like take 2 a day. I'm like, this packet's only for like a week.
Yeah,
It's so expensive.
So expensive. The normal sort of generalized stack that I recommend to people would be, again, multivitamin, high strength one, omega-3 high strength one, vitamin D high strength. You can get all 3 for 2 from Boots. I think it covers about £25 now, that's about 6 months worth. So I'm like, cool, easily done. And don't get your pants pulled down by My Protein. You want to charge you like 50 quid for the omega-3 capsules.
You heard it here first.
Save yourself.
We don't stand for My Protein.
No, not at all.
We stand for Boots here. Or Superdrug, maybe. They have it at Superdrug? I don't know.
Possibly. I just know Boots because it's the one that I've just eventually found myself over time, type of thing. One of the other questions we had come through from Instagram was to do with cross training. So one of the questions came in, this individual is doing a lot of boxing, a lot of jiu-jitsu, finding obviously both of them together is really good obviously for her cardiovascular element to it, and obviously getting that output, building up his lungs, which is obviously fantastic. She's trying to implement or is implementing some strength training as well. And so did she say she was struggling with that, sorry, or she...
Maybe she was
More
worried.
or less just I think it's more that it doesn't complement each other.
So she's worried obviously the strength training is going to hinder the cardiovascular training basically. So what's your take on it as someone who's obviously got both of them somewhat?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've got really good cardio. Sorry, I'm just going to brag. But
She's got a bike. She's got
I've
cycles
got a bike.
everywhere.
I cycle everywhere. No, I think, like I noticed during that period when I basically had this period of time, for some reason we just like weren't training jiu-jitsu, which we've alluded to earlier. And I was basically just like blasting weights. I said blast again. There should be a counter for that. And like eating. And I got up to like 80 kilos. It was so bad. But like I was very strong. And I got back to jiu-jitsu and I was like, but like once I got back to jiu-jitsu, it was fine. And I like still lift a lot and still train a lot. And I don't have any problems. But when you're lifting, like you have to be balanced, right? You're not lifting to like achieve like big lifts like power lifters or, you know, some of the ollie lifting guys. Like we have some really cool ollie lifting guys at Sweatbox who are like professionals, and I'm like, wow. It's like ballet almost. It's beautiful. It's very elegant. But like as long as you're still doing jiu-jitsu and boxing, it should be fine. And you know when to like dial it back with the weights. Like I don't really hit maxes very much. I don't think I've done a max for like a year.
No, there's an argument to it, especially with sort of max lifting, especially when it comes to deadlifting. I know you do more hex bar stuff rather than straight bar.
No, just straight bar. I like straight bar conventional because I'm very boring.
It's fine. No, with obviously 1 rep max deadlifts, there's this big argument in terms of risk to reward ratio. And one of the strongmen talked about this many years ago and said, look, at the end of the day, unless you're a power lifter or a strongman, there is no benefit to you trying to achieve a 1 rep max on a deadlift at the potential outcome of you getting injured from it, which all of a sudden the risk goes through the
fun.
roof.
I like max stuff for the fun of it, but I just don't. Like sometimes I'll be like, I could do this with like, you know, I could do this press with like 30 kilos or 40 kilos.
Outcast has just turned up.
Don't worry. That's
an incredible. So much editing to do on this one.
There was a vocal warm-up.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
We are in practice studio.
It's all right. It's fine. I was just like Outcast have just turned up all of a sudden. Right, where were we? It was lifting.
I was just saying, like, when you're lifting, like, you have to, like, consider why you're lifting. And, like, whatever program you're doing, any program is probably fine as long as you do it. But, like, if you can do it with, like, you know, 50 kilos, that's, like, a strain on you. Consider what else you have to do. So, like, maybe drop it back. You know, you don't have to lift super heavy all the time.
That's interesting. I think some S&C guys might hate me for saying this, but if you're trying to lift, let's say, to contribute towards your jiu-jitsu game, right, there's a certain threshold, which again, in my opinion from this, is that you're not going to come across an athlete who's going to be 200 kilograms as a deadlift. So what is the
Yeah.
purpose of you being able to lift 200 kilograms when the top echelon could be, what, 120, 130? And so trying to replicate that towards, obviously, there's nothing wrong with getting strong. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but surely bring the numbers down, reduce the risk down, and then look for the repetition where all of a sudden that could be quite realistic in that jiu-jitsu environment, if you see what I mean. I don't know if you've ever had those thoughts at all or anything similar.
Yeah, I just like lifting super heavy stuff can be really fun.
Okay.
It's like with the ollie lifting, it's for fun.
Yeah.
Like I would not, like I'm not aiming to hit a max deadlift. I'd like to do 140 one day, which is like double body weight. I think like I have it in me. Like I've wrapped like 125, but I just can't be bothered. I've got other stuff I want to do. Maybe later. It's like running a marathon. I'd love to run a marathon, but for a marathon you actually have to like properly train. Like
I've seen people hungover do the London Marathon just like on a whim and just going like, right, we'll just do it, whatever.
Yeah, but like I've done half marathons and stuff with like very little training, but a marathon I'd like to do properly. So I'm gonna leave that for like when I'm old.
Love it. Okay, what's an unpopular jiu-jitsu opinion that you have?
No.
Okay. Everyone says pulls the exact same face. The last podcast was like, I'm not saying it. I can't say this.
No, I'm gonna say it. I'm just trying to think of which one because I've got like
Well,
loads.
fire them. Let's go.
I think instructionals are good, but people need to realize that their coach can actually be a really amazing resource. And their coach might do something differently, but that might not be wrong. Just because, you know, someone's like, this is like the min-maxing thing. Someone's like, this is the best way to do it. I'm like, it's the best way to do it for them. But like, someone else might have a different way of doing it. And if you can't like find what's wrong with it, then both ways are equally valid. Oh God, more unpopular opinions. Oh gosh, that's like one of my
We've
main
definitely
ones.
lost our sponsorship with BJJ Fanatics now, haven't we?
No, I love instructionals, but I think people don't use them right. They like watch the whole thing and they try to drill like the entire thing. And I'm like, no, like I like wrestling instructionals. I watch a lot of wrestling videos and Marcelo and AOJ. I think that's pretty much what I'm watching right now, but mostly just Marcelo and wrestling. And I'll like watch like a 5-minute segment of the video and that's what I'll drill for the next like month or two.
Sure.
People try to do too many things at once, and that's not how you get good fast. You'll get good. It just takes time.
I'll make a note of that. So I feel like you're literally talking to
I
me
think
there.
I was teaching a nogi, or I was just like starting the nogi off for Pedro because he was running late, and like we often work with takedown entries.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, if you want to get good at takedowns, pick one. Don't be bad at 5 things. Be good at one. So that was my like really aggressive comment to the class. I think I just didn't have any snacks, so I was a bit cranky. I think people need to be more honest. Like, I don't think it's an unpopular opinion, but I think people need to be more honest, like, about, like, tournaments and stuff. Like, you have Instagram and stuff like that, and you can post highlights and medals and things like that, but I think you have to be honest about what it took to get there, how many people might be in your division. So if you got silver in a 2-person division, definitely be honest. Like, though I realized, like, a lot of people don't realize that default means, like, you didn't win. And I don't mean be honest because, like, oh, you shouldn't lie. I just mean be honest so people know what the process is like. Because, like, if everyone's just, like, you know, doing super well all the time, people don't know that process and they feel really bad. Or, like I was talking about with women, like, when you train with, like, big guys all the time, like, it's really hard to execute anything. And not no one, like, I think more people are talking about it now, but it's less spoken about. Like, you're like, oh, yeah, she's just, like, messes up the guys. But it's hard. It's hard work. Like, trying to think of more unpopular opinions.
I have more if you have anything else.
I know, I'm trying to think of other ones.
You've got a
I'm
list.
sure there's more. I'm sure there's more. Yeah, I think that might be it for now. There might be more. Have me back. Have me back for an unpopular opinions special mini episode.
You'll just burst in on the
Oh,
podcast.
actually, no. My last one is it's all Marcelo, and it always has been.
Okay.
That's more about Nogi.
Nothing wrong with that. So, obviously Canadian, you then have the opportunity to submit probably, I don't know if he is viewed as this, but probably a idol sports person in the world. You have GSP in the ring. Would you submit him or not?
No.
You wouldn't?
Well, I mean, if he just like lay there and let me do it, yeah. like you know, I'm sure it's possible in like a certain set of circumstances, but like, you know, is he like, asleep or
We're
something.
just talking yeah, well, after you've strangled him to death. There we go.
I would feel pretty bad.
You'd feel pretty
There'd
bad.
probably be riots in Quebec. They love a riot.
There we go. You got to deal with the conundrum. I've just submitted GSP, like hypothetically, whatever move you wanted to, and
yeah.
you've got that victory over him, or you then got the backlash of everyone going, "You've just ruined like probably."
I want it to be a burrata plata though.
Burrata plata.
Yeah.
Love it. Do you speak French coming from Canada?
Oui, je parle français.
Hey! I wish I could reply. I don't know. So
That's okay. I just said yes. I speak French.
If I rehearsed it.
Swine, how dare you not speak
Well, my French teacher hated me. I'm sorry.
It's because I love croissant.
Well, true. You are the pastry queen. Speaking of which,
What we're doing a bakery recommendations.
I want the top three from the area.
Top three from the area?
Let's do from the area of Bristol. So
From there,
anyone else?
Bristol. Hearts, number one. Hearts never misses on anything. That's kind of a Bristol secret because it's a little weirdly hard to find. It's like the main station Temple Meads. It has this like ramp leading up to it, and there's some arches, and it's in those arches.
Ooh, that inspired. Obviously,
Their cinnamon bun is like the most incredible thing, but they usually sell out by like 8:30 a.m. But everything else there is so good that you won't be upset. Other good bakeries. What else do I like? I quite like the Loaf. They do these, I think they might be doing them now, these like cream buns that are like Swedish. I think they're called semla, and they're like just like a cream bun with like a load of nice cream inside, and they have really nice food. It's a nice place to meet people. There's like a branch, I think they have 3 in Bristol, maybe. There's a branch by the gym in Bedminster, and it's got like lots of seating, so it's a nice place to go before training.
I get a feeling my barber's is opposite the Loaf. So you got like clear glass and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Skeleton barbers as well. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it is across from there.
Yeah.
God, I had a third one in my head and it just like dropped out.
Hey, we got top 2.
No, it's so good. Oh, I like Small Goods, which does donuts. That's actually really close to here.
How does Hearts in comparison to the rest of your travels? Where would it still be number 1, or would you say
It's pretty good. Like I've eaten too many baked goods.
That's right.
Like some of the bakeries in Portugal, but it's a different genre of baking. And France obviously is just like, but I think Hearts would probably do pretty well in France.
Yeah.
Yeah, but God.
See,
I went to Paris. I went to Montmartre with my friend, like just like in 2021 summer, which was kind of like a weird time to travel.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't really crowded, and dude, I ate so much. Like, there's a place that specializes in eclair, there's a place that specializes in madeleines, there's a place that specializes in bread.
In your element by the sound of things.
Yeah, I need to go to France again.
Actually, I think the thing is, every time I go to France, I just see macaroons everywhere. I just think they're massively overrated.
Macarons are good, but like, I think people, because they're cute, people think they're going to be amazing, but they're just kind of, they're good. They're really hard to make. I've made them. You have to make like meringue and then like, but I like the classic flavors like rose and stuff, but I feel like it's more like an afternoon tea sort of thing rather than something you just eat as a snack. Like it needs something with it. The pastry talk. The
pastry talk. We'll change the podcast name to pastry all the way through.
I'll have a pastry cast. That probably exists already. That's too obvious.
I'm offended you didn't mention Herbert's Bakery.
Where's Herbert's then?
Actually, down Callaway.
I cycle.
Really nice.
I've heard it's good.
It's very
I might try it.
very good.
I'm trying to think of what the third one is because it's going to drive me nuts. Because Loaf is actually my number 3, but I was like, I should say Loaf because it's close to the gym. There's a third one, and it's just gone. That's so upsetting. It's okay.
No chain ones then, no like Parsons or anything like that.
Parsons is pretty good. Like, it's not expensive, which is what makes it great. And they used to have cheap iced coffee. Their cheap iced coffee was
That's
good.
what you should
But
have,
it's expensive in Clifton and
coffee,
cheap
that's my problem.
in somewhere
You've not
else.
seen it. Emily does a very
No, I had this.
extensive iced coffee
There's an
review. It's
extensive
amazing.
iced coffee review, like
It's
Atlas,
so
on my
good.
Instagram
It's
highlights.
so good.
Okay,
Yeah.
so here's a question for you. As you just found out there, I'm not into coffee
That's
in the
okay.
slightest bit.
You don't
It's
have
not
to be.
okay.
Where do I it's not okay. Jamie, quiet. Back in your box, Jamie. Where would I start if I wanted to try and get into iced coffee? What would be your recommendations? I've had friends who, I've got good close friends, obviously live in Dallas, and they basically just told me to keep on adding creamer until I liked it, and it basically turned up to creamer
Creamer's
with a
so
sprinkle
American.
with a sprinkle of coffee on top. I was like, I'm just drinking pure creamer here, not even coffee. Where would you recommend? For
There's
this,
two paths. This is my like
the path to greatness.
paths era.
Are you a bottom player or a top player?
No. Like an iced latte is pretty easy going,
Yeah.
right? Because that's basically just milk, especially if it's a weak iced latte. Because a lot of the places, if they give you a lot of milk and they put a single shot in it, it's basically just milk. Maybe that or an iced mocha. People like mocha. They say mocha here, but it's actually mocha back home. And every time I order one, I get something completely different. Or Starbucks has this thing with like this cold foam, and the foam is very nice. So I think you'd like that.
All right, I'll give those a whirl for certain. Probably we'll wrap it up there. Unless you've got anything else you want to ask me at all, or anything else you consider, like got anything coming up, or
What do you drink if you don't drink coffee?
Shameless plug.
Bro.
I wouldn't mind a sponsor from it. Everyone hates this stuff, right?
No, it's all right.
The thing is that I'm sure you're aware, obviously touching on Olympic lifting within the CrossFit world, they all love something called NOCO or NOCO. Ever heard of that?
They're like fine, but because they're like no carbs, which is insane if you want to give people energy, because you need the carbs, which is why I have the sweets, which I alluded to earlier.
Fantastic.
For the quick
source of
energy.
food.
But they just taste kind of bad. Like,
So
I don't want to be mean to NOCO. Like, I actually like the flavors, but because they use sweetener, like, whatever sweetener they're using just hits something weird on my tongue. Like, I like the concept, but I think they should have a carbs version
Definitely.
of NOCO.
So the thing, my argument with this, obviously, there's no carbohydrates in it. It's very, very, very minimal. It's got sodium in, which NOCOs don't have. Sodium is really useful for even trying to transfer carbohydrate into, or glucose into the muscles. And also, for the same price I buy this, the NOCO can's about this. So I'm already getting less for the same price, and I prefer the flavours. I think NOCO flavours are shit, to say the least. But
They have very nice looking cans, though.
They do,
Very
they do.
aesthetic.
I give them that.
For the gram.
No, exactly. All right, cool. Well, Emily, thanks for being on. Shout outs to sponsors, any events coming up, any, I don't know, have we got an exclusive match that you might be coming up for we can grab?
Well, thanks to Grappler Soap, who made this very nice hoodie, which you won't see if you're listening, sorry, just imagine it.
It's on YouTube, it's all good.
And then Electrum for continuing to sponsor me with S&C. And then thanks to all my friends and training partners and my coaches and my no, sorry. I had something I was going to say, it's gone. But thanks everyone for listening.
Well, thanks very much for being on. It's been an absolute pleasure. We've learnt a lot, and obviously I think it will definitely get people thinking about different parts of the jiu-jitsu world, especially from the female perspective as well. Yeah, it's been great to meet you, mate. Thank you very much.
Thank you.